Let me read through. I'll read this script. We're called to order, and the recording secretary will call the roll.
Jose Cardenas,
Present.
C. Michael Cooney,
Here.
David Simmons.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Today we're constituting an ad hoc committee, and we're interviewing candidates for the public member positions on the Committee of Credentials. There are 2 vacancies for public member on the committee. Public member interviews will be conducted via Zoom. At the conclusion of the interview process, the ad hoc committee may select 2 individuals to recommend to the commission for appointment, a public member on the Committee of Credentials. The commission will then take final action on Friday, December 10th at its regular meeting. The ad hoc committee will now accept any public comment on this item. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. So I'm going to ask the recording secretary if there are any public comments at this time.
We have no public comments.
All right, then the public comment period is closed. And we will begin with our first candidate for the public member position on the Committee of Credentials, Barry Kalar. How does that pronounce? Well, we can ask Mr. Kalar if we get him, but if you know, Rhonda, that would be helpful.
We just texted him, so he will be logging shortly.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Kalar, could you tell me the correct pronunciation of your name?
Sure, it's Kaler.
Kaler, good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Guessing a different pronunciation, but we're awfully glad to have you appear with us here.
just don't call me late to dinner.
Right. You understand, Mr. Kaler, that what we're doing today is to interview 2 candidates for vacancies on the Committee of Credentials, a very important body to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And we'll be asking questions of you. When we complete our questions, you'll be free to add any comments that you feel may not have been brought out by the questions. And we'll do the same thing for our second candidate. Then at the end of the second interview, we'll deliberate and determine whether we will appoint 1 or 2 members to our vacancies.
Okay, fair.
All right. Do you have any other questions before we start?
No, fire away.
All right, great. We're ready to go. So our first question, well, first of all, I should introduce our panel of ad hoc commissioners. Jose Cardenas is going to ask the first question. And the second question will be from David Simmons. And I'll ask the third and so on down. But you should feel free to ask any of us any questions at any time.
Okay, fair enough.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Cardenas, if you would.
Well,
Question.
welcome, yes, welcome, Mr. Kaler. I have the privilege of asking you the first question. Are you currently employed in either a certificated public schools position, or are you a member of any governing board of a school district or county board of education?
No to both.
Thank you, sir.
I have number 2, and that is the Committee of Credentials meets 3 full days per month and is required to prepare for the meeting by reviewing all cases in advance. The committee reviews educator misconduct cases to determine whether to recommend discipline on the educator's license. Do you believe you can make this time commitment and review this subject matter?
Yes, that would not be a problem.
Mr. Kaler, as question number 3, would you tell us why you're interested in serving on the Committee of Credentials?
Well, I was actually, a friend of mine has served on the committee previously. And he told me there might be an opening. He gave me an overview, just as what you've described, of what it's about, and thought I could help. I think it's a very valuable thing that you're doing, and we want the best possible people teaching. I myself, if you've looked over my resume, I'm currently a community college adjunct professor and have been for, well, it's almost 16 years now, and had 8 years previous teaching during my law enforcement career. So I understand the importance of having good people in the classroom, and if someone is subject to discipline, they need a fair process to determine, are they going to continue, or is that someone we actually want teaching our kids?
Right. Okay, Commissioner Cardenas, if you're ready, number 4.
Yes. Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or the Commission on Teacher Credentialing? If capacity.
I do know Steve Thorpe, who was, I think he's off now, but that's the only person I knew that was a party to the credentialing committee.
And your relationship to him was in what respect?
We're longtime friends and co-teachers at Sacramento City College.
Great. Commissioner Simmons.
Please describe your knowledge of the Education Code, California Code of Regulations, and case law as it relates to the nexus to fitness to teach, adverse action against credentials, and the Committee of Credentials. And if you'd like me to read that again, I will, because it's long.
Well, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that, but I have in front of me California's laws and rules pertaining to discipline of professional certified personnel. And I've been perusing through it. As I understand it, if an issue comes up, before a credential can be removed or taken away, it has to go through a due process. And that's part of what this credentialing committee is about, is to see that that person gets a fair hearing. So that is my interpretation, the Reader's Digest version of what's expected.
And either in discussions with Mr. Thorpe or otherwise, do you know how the committee carries out its responsibilities?
Well, I akin it to when I served on the Board of Education for Washington Unified School District. the way your process works, as I understand it, is a packet of materials is sent out ahead of time for the commissioner or the person to review. And then you meet, and I'll ask a question related to this later. Then you meet as a group to go through the cases one by one and determine what your take is and have some discussion about what the appropriate action is, whether to revoke, suspend, approve the credential, what have you.
One question we have for you is, what strengths or qualities do you feel you possess that would be assets to serving on the committee? And what, if any, are weaknesses that might impact your service?
Well, my strengths, my background, I served as a police chief for 18 years. During the course of that time, I had a lot of disciplinary situations that arose in my department. So I'm well aware of due process and how all that works. The other side of that is, while I was serving as trustee for the Washington Unified School District, 2 years as the board president, we had a lot of disciplinary things that came to our attention as a board. And I akin this process very similar to that. And you have to be judicious, you have to be fair, and you know, the bottom line is you're impacting somebody's potential career, and the other side of the coin is what's best for the kids that are going to be in the classroom. You don't want someone with a bad background or creating the wrong environment for the kids. So a lot to consider there. Aside from that, I've been very active in Rotary, for those who know what Rotary is. And I'm a past district governor for District 5180. And in that capacity and since, I've had to deal with certain issues that arose. Dealing with a volunteer organization is much different than a mandatory working environment, but nonetheless, you have some drama, you have things that come up and you have to deal with them. For 7 years, as of 3 years ago, I was also the youth protection officer for the district. So, which meant that I helped screen people that were going to be working with the kids through Rotary. So anyway, kind of a broad background answer to your question. I hope it helps clarify what makes me suitable.
Certainly on the qualified side, the follow-up part of the question, do you anticipate you have any weaknesses? Would you be inclined to vote against removal or discipline of an employee or a teacher if, in your experience, discipline was called for?
Well, I got a little confused by your question, but let me give it my best shot here at answering. I wouldn't enter into any of these deliberations with a preconceived notion other than what the facts are. If something egregious has, happened, the facts will speak for themselves. I won't allow my personal opinions to enter into yay or nay on a particular situation. For example, if a teacher is accused and it's been shown to be valid that they've been having intimate relations with a student, I'll have no compunction about pulling their credential.
That addressed my convoluted question very well. Thank you. We actually are transitioning to a couple of examples, hypothetical examples. So Commissioner Cardenas will start and will will pick up on this, but as I say, any way you answer the question is the right way. So that's just fine.
Oh, I love it. A no-lose question. Those are good.
Right.
So these will be scenarios. So please listen to the following scenarios. For each one, please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential. Please explain your decision-making process. So we'll start with the first scenario. Scenario number one, an educator has 3 felony drug convictions in 1997, 1998, and 1999. On each occasion, the educator used cocaine.
Keep going. Commissioner Cardenas, read all three.
So scenario 2, an educator learned that one of his high school female students spent the night at his male colleague's residence. The educator did not report this information to law enforcement. And then the final scenario, scenario number 3, a male teacher appearing before the Committee of Credentials admits that he has taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life and dating life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior.
So Mr. Cardenas, if you would just start again with scenario number 1, get an answer, and then we'll move to the next and so on.
Okay, so again, back to the scenario number 1. So please listen to this to the scenario. Please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential. And please explain your decision making. So for scenario number 1, an educator has 3 felony drug convictions in 1997, 1998, and 1999. On each occasion, the educator used cocaine.
Okay, so the 2 options were close, in other words, not take it any further or suspend the person's credential. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential.
Okay. First of all, I hate hypotheticals. I just throw that out there because you very often don't have enough facts. And I'll mention where I think some of the facts are lacking in these scenarios here in a second. But the first one, in today's environment, use of cocaine on 3 different occasions would be nowhere close to a felony. That said, back in the late 90s, mere possession was considered, quote, a felony. Barring recent use, if the person has had over 20 years of no drug use, has a clean record, I would consider that, absent other information that they're continuing to use, that I would probably consider closing the case. I'm not sure how it's coming to the fore this late in the game. There are questions that aren't being answered here. Was the person using while they were credentialed back in that time? Or is this, did they get the credential without indicating they had been arrested? That would be a different issue. In other words, if they failed to report while they were getting their credential and it comes out later, to me, that's subject to take away their credential. So again, hypotheticals are bad because you don't get enough information. Based on just what the little you gave me, I think I would allow them to continue teaching, assuming they have a good recent record.
Thank you. And so we'll move on to scenario 2. An educator learned that one of his high school female students spent the night at his male colleague's residence. The educator did not report this information to law enforcement. So would you close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential?
Okay, again, I would want to have more information. Teachers are mandatory reporters. If they are aware of illegal or inappropriate actions on the part of a minor, they have a duty to report. If they failed to report as mandated by law, that would be, I think, sufficient to take the person's credential. However, did they make a report to the school? Is there a process internally within the school to deal with this? You know, perhaps there's something going on that we're unaware of here. Why was the child staying at the other teacher's home? Was it supervised? Was it, you know, is there any indication it was an inappropriate liaison? Those are all things that, you know, I think would need to be answered. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm equivocating here, but it's the cop in me. You know, I want more information before I pounce on something. But based on the little you've given me, if it appears it's inappropriate, they're a mandatory report or they could lose their credential.
Yes, and these are tough scenarios. So you're explaining your decision-making process. So that's exactly what we're looking for. So scenario number 3, a male teacher appearing before the Committee of Credentials admits that he has taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life and dating life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials explaining of the teacher's behavior. Would you close the matter or recommend discipline?
Okay, once again, I think I need to know what's the context of how the person's helping. It sounds on its surface like you've got a very compassionate, empathetic teacher who's trying to help a troubled kid. Those things need to be done, if they're going to be done, with transparency and above board. Because the minute that it looks like there's something untoward going on is where you cross the line and it becomes a problem. Again, I'd want more facts before I'd make a decision on pulling the person's credential. You know, I have seen teachers, you know, try to help students. And where you've got to be careful as a teacher is how you go about doing that. Yeah, because you can run afoul of, you know, somebody thinking that there's something bad going on when it's absolutely innocent. So again, I think at this point I would close it, and if there's something indicating something bad is going on, absolutely take disciplinary action.
Mr. Kaler, and Commissioner Cardenas, I think the way you read the question, the parents submitted an affidavit explaining the teacher's behavior, and it really, we're asking if you received an affidavit that the parents were complaining about the behavior of the teacher, would that make a difference to you?
Well, it's, again, what was the teacher doing? If parents complain about teachers all the time. When I served on the school board, my God, we had, you know, teacher or parents lined up to complain about, you know, the school or us as a board all the time at board meetings. That's not uncommon. The question is, what's the purpose for the complaint? Is it merited? Just because they sign an affidavit doesn't mean that the teacher did anything wrong or with malintent. That's my position.
Great. Commissioner Simmons, you have question number 8.
Okay, please consider a situation in which most members of the Committee on Credentials feel differently than you do as to the recommendation of discipline. In your deliberations, you've identified that 5 members oppose your recommendation and only 1 member agrees with you. How would you handle this?
Well, okay, this is interesting because I think this can come up. The question is, if I'm the lone dissenter on a particular opinion, and it might be something where I feel so strongly that the person deserves discipline and they think they shouldn't, or vice versa. I'm not going to acquiesce on my principles just because I have people disagreeing with me. If I feel my rationale is justified and I can articulate a good reason for it, I'm open to have my opinion changed, but again, if that's where I stand on the facts. Now, the question is, it sounds to me like if the 5 versus 1 are going to be the ones that are going to rule the day regardless. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Another good answer, Mr. Kaler. The next question, a real life question without being a real life set of facts. When faced with a difficult case in the committee, which do you think should be given greater weight? The protection of the teacher or the protection of the school children?
Well, tie always goes to the kids. I always felt that as a school board member. To this day, the kids come first. And, I have empathy when you're sitting as a person who can take away a person's livelihood. That is not something that should be done lightly. But at the end of the day, the kids are the most important denominator in the equation of what you're going to do.
Good, we have one more. Commissioner Cardenas, you have 10.
Yes, I do. So you're very concerned about a case that you read as a member of the Committee of Credentials, because the case involves a close friend of yours. After you read the case, you feel that the facts reported to the commission by the district about your friend are false. You feel obligated to inform your friend and feel that the committee should close the case and take no discipline on your friend's credentials. What issues should you consider before proceeding?
Well, the best order of business would be to recuse myself from consideration. Something serious has come up against a friend, or I know the person that's being, it's kind of like being a judge. If a judge is in a position of having a conflict of interest, they should recuse themselves and not participate. And I think that is the best, most honorable way to deal with it, is remove yourself from the process.
Well, that's the last question we have, Mr. Kaler, all of which were answered very well, I think. But I'm wondering if you have any lingering questions about the committee, its duties, or the responsibility of members of the committee.
Yeah, well, no, and again, thanks to my friend, I've asked him a bunch of questions, but I do have one for you guys. Will everything still be handled on Zoom, or is there any likelihood of meeting in person for these hearings, if you want to call them that, where the cases are being reviewed? Will it always be by Zoom, or is there ever a need to meet in person?
Oh, well, that's a really good question that we on the commission ask regularly as well, because we favor in-person meetings as people. Being in the same room and observing the reactions of people to specific issues and decisions is very important. Zoom is a distant second, and we'd love to be able to abandon Zoom as a means of meeting. And I feel certain the committee feels the same way. But I should ask one of our staff if there's been any discussion yet, or inclination toward the committee meeting in person as opposed to by Zoom. Is our council present? Katie's here.
Hi.
Sorry.
Hi, yes. So the committee will be meeting via teleconference through January. And thereafter, I'm really not sure yet. Considering the pandemic, things are kind of up in the air. So there are no guarantees.
Okay, so my follow-up question, thank you, Katie. My follow-up question would be if there are going to be in-person meetings, which, Michael, I concur with you. I think in person is always best, but would they be in Sacramento? Or do you move them around the state depending on, you know, where
They
the...
do occur in Sacramento at the commission headquarters.
Okay, that's good. I live in West Sac, so easy peasy.
Yes, the committee meets in its own meeting room, and they are hearings with applicants and often counsel for the applicants being present. The committee members, 2 or more members of the staff also attend, and it's very similar to a court proceeding in the manner of how it's conducted. So certainly due process is at the uppermost, and the committee, I've been fortunate to go to quite a few committee meetings, and it's a very positive process, no matter how difficult the case, because the committee members are so competent and interactive and deliberate carefully for the benefit of the public and the credential holders.
Well, again, thank you for that, Michael. Yeah, I've many years in law enforcement and depositions and testifying in court, and then again as a trustee for the school board. I've heard, I can't tell you how many cases. So I appreciate that it's handled in such a you know, a fair and respectful way. That's good to hear. And again, I agree, in person is best.
Right. Well, the committee holds a big responsibility in the process, the discipline process. By comparison, the committee hears many more cases and is able to dispose of them one way or another, so that all those cases don't reach the commission. But many do. The parties have appeal rights, and there's a very specific procedure. But there's a close relationship between the committee's process and the commission's process. And through it all, we like to think that we do a good job for all concerned.
You partially answered my last question, and that was, of the cases that are heard by the credentialing committee, what percentage of them get appealed? Because obviously if someone gets their, you know, credential removed, they're probably going to appeal if they think, you know, it's legit. I'm just curious what percentage go up the chain for appeal.
Yeah, that's a question that I've probably heard answered several times. Not sure if Katie has a number of how it is lately, but there isn't just 1 or 2 tracks where the case could go following deliberation by the committee. It could go to the commission. It could be closed, as we talked about it, and be diverted away from the process altogether. Or it could be appealed by the credential holder if adverse action is recommended by the committee, so that the matter would bypass the commission and go directly to an administrative hearing. That's one of the choices available. So in terms of percentage, Katie, are there any reliable statistics on how many go which way?
Good afternoon. I don't want to quote any percentages, especially because this is a public meeting and I could be wrong. But I used to do the workload reports for this, and going off of my previous memory, the caseload that would go over to the Office of the Attorney General for appeal was between about 10 to 15 cases per meeting. But at that time, the committee was hearing between I think 90 and 105 cases. So that whatever percentage that would be, 10% of the cases tend to be appealed. And right now the committee is not hearing that level of cases. So I'm not sure what the current number is, but I think give or take, it's about 10%. And that's a guesstimate.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I wasn't trying to put anybody on the spot. It just interested me to see how effective the process at the lower level. If I could, I'll just give you a quick little anecdotal thing here. When I was as a police chief, I had a minor disciplinary action that ended up getting appealed all the way to the California Court of Appeal. So you never know where these things are going to go.
Yes, we've seen the courts as part of the disciplinary process. Even though we provide for administrative hearings, the courts do end up hearing some of those cases. A small percentage, we like to think, but that is available, and there are lots and lots of remedies.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today and for your bearing with our questions. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. We look forward to deliberating and considering your candidacy.
Well, thank you all for your time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Very good. Good
Have a great day.
Okay, so I'm just looking if there's an opportunity for the committee to discuss this at this point, but it looks like we go directly to the second candidate and then we'll discuss them both together. So we're ready for the second call. Does anybody need a break before we do? Should be about the same amount of time. David, you good?
Good.
Good. Okay, great. All right. We have our second candidate. I can see, do you say Maeva?
Maeva.
Maeva, that's even better. I saw the accent and wondered how you worked it in. Nice to meet you, Maeva Renaud. We are three members of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and we formed an ad hoc committee to interview and potentially appoint members to our committee of credentials. And you are being interviewed for a position as a public member of the committee. There are two public members on the committee, and the committee also consists, as you may know, of teachers and administrators, and a broad spectrum of the education industry. But the public members are not, at least currently, involved as professional educators. So it gives some diversity to the committee that is very important. So I'm Michael Cooney. I'm the chair of this ad hoc meeting, and I have with me two of my fellow commissioners, Jose Cardenas and David Simmons.
Good afternoon, commissioners. It's a pleasure to meet you all today. And good afternoon to commission staff as well.
Yes, thank you very much. We have a series of questions at the end of which you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions you might have of the committee as to what the duties or involvement of the committee is with respect to the commission or generally. I would be glad to answer any you might have. So do you have any to start with? Maeva?
No, no questions to start with.
Okay, good. Then we'll start with question number 1, and Commissioner Simmons will ask you this question.
Are you currently employed in either a certificated public school position, or are you a member of any governing board of a school district or county board of education?
I am not.
That's the easy question. Now, no, I'm kidding. They're all easy. Question number 2, I will ask. The Committee of Credentials meets 3 full days per month and is required to prepare for the meeting by reviewing all cases in advance. The committee reviews educator misconduct cases to determine whether to recommend discipline on the educator's license. Do you believe that you can make this time commitment and still have time to review the subject matter?
Yes, I do.
So that I maybe didn't emphasize it enough. It's really a lot of time. It's extremely valuable, but it really cuts into all else you're doing in your private life. No problem.
Not a problem.
Great. Commissioner Simmons.
I think it's my turn this time.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Commissioner.
got question 3. So welcome. So you have the 3rd question. Please tell us why you are interested in serving on the Committee of Credentials.
So I've been working with children and families since I was 14 years old. And due to my own personal experience as an orphan, an immigrant, and English language learner, I've always wanted to impact the lives of children and families, especially those in the margins, and especially when it comes to educational and enrichment opportunities. I have a desire to ensure that all children have access to high quality education in a meaningful and engaging environment. And so the reason I want to be part of this commission is to join the efforts and ongoing work in cultivating and sustaining educators who protect and nurture the love of learning to our youngest minds and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Simmons.
I'm the next one. Do you know any of the current members who sit on the Committee of Credentials or on the Commission of Teacher Credentialing? And if you do, in what capacity?
No one personally.
Okay. Could you for us describe your knowledge of the Education Code, the California Code of Regulations and case law as it relates to nexus to fitness to teach, adverse action against credentials, and the Committee of Credentials?
Yes. And so my understanding of Education Code, specifically around certificated employees, is that our employees must follow the code. And within the commission, my understanding is that the committee ensures and makes sure that our certificate employees are following the rules and regulations. I also understand that it is through Ed Code that we develop policies for K-12 as well as preschool programs here in California. And I've had the opportunity to, attend some of our California Department of Ed meetings just to learn more about what's happening on the K-12 policies and their implementation. So that has been most of my experience with Ed Code and the work that I do as an advocate and in a nonprofit organization focused on education. We do monitor new policies within education. And so just having access to ed code is something that I'm familiar with, and knowing where to go to access that, where I'm able to make comments on any ed code amendments. And so those are my own personal experiences in understanding ed code and regulations.
Yes, that question was certainly difficult, and throwing a bunch of issues before you that test your knowledge of the guidebooks, if you will, of the committee. And you've already indicated your experience is really from the standpoint of preschool rather than K-12 discipline. Also, the committee hears cases involving administrators, teachers, anybody in the education process that holds a credential. And so you haven't been a part of any of those disciplinary processes, have you, either as a member of a panel or otherwise?
No, I have not.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
So it leads to the next question. What strengths or qualities do you feel you possess that would be assets to serving on the Committee of Credentials? And then the second part to that would be, what weaknesses may impact your service?
Well, besides my passion and commitment to children and families, I would say the strengths that I bring are my background and experience as a former special education teacher and preschool teacher, where I had to collaborate with administrators. I had to collaborate with other teachers and caseworkers. There was a lot of documents that I had to read and analyze in a short amount of times. I also had to keep federal documents like an IEP or individual education plan confidential. And also I worked with groups of folks to find consensus around what would be best for children. In 2018, I also participated in a public policy fellowship where I had to advocate for educational equity. And this opportunity allowed me to dive deeper into policy analysis and translate that into real life experience to be able to advocate on behalf of children and families. And I believe that the relationships that I've been able to form with other education advocates and being part of the Early Learning and Care Coalition, where my goal is to build trust and find common ground with individuals that may have varying perspectives and priorities. To me, I think my strength is developing transformational relationships and partnerships. In the work that I do now as an organizer and educator working with parents and teachers, I love to engage with various stakeholders and help to and get parents and teachers to understand various policies that can impact them and their families, and also being able to tell stories to convey messages in an effective way to bring about impacts that serve our children and families and their communities are the things that I believe are my strengths. And what I want to continue to grow in is my impact within policy analysis and looking at how we can make California one of the pioneers of high quality education for preschool through 12th grade.
So Maeva, the job of the committee for which we're interviewing you is less about education and more about educators.
Right.
That is, if if there is an educator who has committed a crime, for example, this is something that could well come before the committee, and the committee would deliberate and decide whether there should be any kind of action taken.
Mhm.
You do understand that's the function of the committee.
Correct. Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So would you say that your lack of experience would be in that area where you've had to judge and take action on people's licenses?
In regards to deliberating over people's licenses, it's not something that I have had the opportunity to do as of yet. And I definitely want to make sure that our children are served by some of the best educators, and want to be able to sustain the educators that we have, the good educators that we have. And so I do believe in making sure that folks have their due process, and that, you know, they are provided with the supports that they need to continue to be in the classroom, and whether or not we need to remove any educators that are not fulfilling, you know, their duties based on the credential that they have, and if they're violating any laws. And that's something that I think I can bring in, you know, just my personal experience as an educator on that sense of it, to really think through, well, what's going on here, you know, or whether or not we need to you know, follow up with the employer, or communicate with the school board around what they have done. But I think that these are areas, just bringing my own teaching experience to the table, I think for me is my strength, but definitely want to be able to grow and making sure that our children are served by some of the best teachers here in California.
Okay. Commissioner Simmons, do you have 7?
I have 7, and it's very long, so I apologize in advance, but know that I will reread sections for you, okay?
Okay, all right.
Okay, so please listen to each of the following scenarios. For each one, please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline on the educator's credential.
Mhm.
Please explain your decision-making process. So I'm going to read you the 3 scenarios, and then I'll go back to each one individually, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so scenario 1. An educator has 3 drug felony convictions in 97, 98, and 1999. On each occasion, the educator used cocaine. That's one scenario. Scenario 2. An educator learned that one of his high school female students spent the night at a male colleague's residence. The educator did not report this information to law enforcement. Third scenario. A male teacher appearing before the Committee of Credentials admits that he has taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothing for her, as well as provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life and dating life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee of Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior. Okay, so those are the 3 scenarios. And for each one, please discuss whether you would close the matter or recommend discipline. And then you explain your decision-making process. So let's do the first one first.
Mhm.
That's the educator has 3 felony drug convictions, one in 1997, one in 1998, and another in 1999. On each occasion, the educator used cocaine.
Okay. So for the first one, what comes to mind to me is that the educator did this a very long time ago, and I wonder if this educator has either, you know, gone through their probation period or received some sort of rehabilitation with their addiction. And I think that's what I would want to know before approving any kind of credential for this educator.
Okay. Okay,
And so I guess I would close this.
okay. Let me get you scenario 2 now. That's the one that says an educator learned that one of his high school female students spent the night in a male colleague's residence. The educator did not report this information to law enforcement.
You said a male colleague?
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's like I'm a teacher
And
and the teacher next door is a male teacher and one of his students spent the night
at their home.
at their house. Yeah,
Yes.
and then I didn't report it.
So if you didn't report it and we find this out that you didn't report it, I'd want to open an investigation as to why you didn't report it. You know, as educator, we are, you know, mandated reporters for any kind of neglect or abuse or child endangerment. And so just also just wanting to know like what happened, knowing, you know, I think I would want to open this up for an investigation, specifically around the other educator who had a minor sleep over their home, as to why the minor was sleeping over their home. You know, if there was any report or like was anyone reported, like how did we come to find out about this? Was there a complaint? Did the employer, you know, yes, we know that the other teacher did not report it, but was the employer notified? How was the employer notified? Was it the child's parents who notified, you know, the employer, or did this get an opportunity to go, you know, wanting to know if there was a complaint made by the parents or not? And if there wasn't, then I would leave the teacher who didn't report it alone, but probably just want to have a conversation with the teacher who had the child in their home.
Okay. And then I've got the third scenario, which is the longest one. So a male teacher appearing before the Committee of Credentials admits that he's taken one of his female students to the mall and purchased clothes for her. He's also provided her transportation outside of school. The educator and student have exchanged texts regarding the student's alleged troubled home life and dating life. The student's parents have submitted an affidavit to the Committee on Credentials complaining of the teacher's behavior.
Okay. You know, being that the parents submitted an affidavit, I mean, I would want to know, well, did the parents talk to the principal or their school district about the teacher? You know, was there a specific misconduct that the parents detailed, or just, you know, thinking about this teacher who it sounds like, there isn't like probable cause here as to what the teacher did. They based on the child having been having issues at home, I think like this information, it should start at the school first with the principal. If because there isn't anything like the teacher wasn't arrested, there's no issue of misconduct here.
Okay. Thank you. And I think Commissioner Cooney is number 8.
Yes. Just a couple more,
Okay.
Mayor, so I think you're doing great. Please consider a situation in which most members of the Committee of Credentials feel differently than you do as to the recommendation of discipline. In other words, there are seven of you sitting around hearing this matter, and 5 of them all decide that there should be some discipline imposed on this credential holder, maybe even up to revoking the license that the teacher has to teach. And you and one other member of the committee feel that something less, maybe nothing at all should be done. In other words, you're in a minority, at least as the discussion goes. How would you handle this situation?
Being that there's a majority, what I would want to do is go back to my colleagues and ask for clarity around, is there something I'm missing that, I need to know more of as far as being in the minority? And is there something that I need to make clearer as to why I chose my position? Is how I would probably respond to this. And then also, just going back to, our policy, our regulations, and based on what the policy says on how we should approach this kind of situation. And if based on what the regulations say, that definitely would trump how I feel regarding the matter.
So we're getting at a very difficult issue, but it's the heart of the job you're interested in taking on. There are cases where you have to make those tough decisions to discipline teachers, even up to removing their credential. Now you're making a recommendation to the commission to have this happen, and the commission has its own process. But as a member of the committee, you're at the front lines, and so you don't have the option to counsel these people. You get a kind of up or down position, either discipline or no discipline. You get one vote. And so that's what we're trying to learn about you is, are you willing and able to do this?
Yes, I mean, like I said before, in regards to like if within the group we have varying views around this, and if I am really strong about what should happen, I would stick to my convictions. But if there are parts where I am a little wavering and just trying to better understand the situations, I would lean to my colleagues for clarity as to how they were able to come to their convictions, and then determine where I stand on that. And if I need to push back, I will. But where I see that, okay, maybe I had some misunderstanding about something, then yes, I will definitely want to come to a consensus.
Yeah, so that helps a lot. You appear to be such a sensitive, meaningful, kind person. It's a hard job at times, you can imagine. And so there'll be times you can't convince your colleagues and you'd be a dissenter, but that doesn't mean you're wrong.
All right.
Okay, let's go to question number 9, Commissioner Cardenas.
Okay, so when faced with a difficult case in the committee, which do you think should be given greater weight? The protection of the teacher or the protection of school children?
Oh, the protection of school children, always.
Okay,
And I have number 10,
yep,
the last question. So you're almost done. But it's a long one, so I apologize.
Okay.
Okay, this is a scenario. Okay, you are very concerned about a case that you read as a member of the Committee on Credentials. Because the case involves a close friend of yours. After you read the case, you feel that the facts reported to the commission by the district, the school district, about your friend are false. You feel obligated to inform your friend, and you feel that the committee should close the case and take no discipline on your friend's behalf, on your friend's credentials. What issues should you consider before you proceed?
And this is a very tricky situation, and to me, what first comes to my mind is this would be a conflict of interest. I know this person, and I don't think it would be ethical for me to actually participate in this, for lack of better words, trial, or to provide comment on this because of the personal relationship I have with this teacher.
yeah, I think that's a good answer, Magda. Do you have anything to add to that?
And I think I would probably state that. I would also, share what I do know of this person, but, and not just trying to persuade the rest of the committee to be in favor of this person, but what I will say, is just clear. This is what I know of the person and what they, and I would like to remove myself from the decision-making of this, but make sure, I would want to, and let my colleagues know to really do a thorough investigation on this. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, these are difficult questions, and I'm sure there's no way to prepare in advance. So you did great, given the circumstances. But I really want, as one final question from the committee, to ask if, if I'm wrong about this, please clarify. But I sense a reluctance on your part to take the credential of another teacher or a principal that comes before you and say, we've heard and believe that these things have been done, and they're wrong, and the only consequence that we can recommend to the commission under these circumstances is revocation of your license. Would that be a difficult decision for you?
Not at all. First and foremost, the reason I'm doing this is to ensure the safety of our children. And if we have educators that are violating that safety, I will not hesitate to do that. What I do believe in is that everybody deserves due process, and making sure that we have all of the evidence that we need to have a disciplinary action on this is important. I would not be hesitant to revoke someone's license.
If the circumstances presented, yeah.
Mhm. If the circumstances definitely was putting the child and other children and staff in danger. Mhm.
Okay, well, do you have any questions that have occurred to you in the course of our asking you questions?
Well, thank you. These were not as easy as I thought they would be. I'm sure, have all of you been specifically on this committee as well? The committee of credentials.
Oh, no. The committee is completely separate from the commission.
Okay.
And we're all members of the commission.
Mhm.
We work very closely with the committee. The committee works all the time, 3-4 days, every single month out of their lives, hearing 100 cases or more. They have to make these tough decisions and recommendations, and they assist the commission in making the final decision as to what should happen. But they're not, members of the committee are, they don't sit down in a room with members of the commission and decide what should be done. It's really a very important responsibility.
And so then thank you for sharing that. And so my question is, when you receive the recommendation from the committee, does the commission just go ahead and accept it, or do you yourselves deliberate whether or not, does the whole process start again with you all, or is it just the committee and you follow the committee's recommendation?
Well, it's a very good question. I know that our counsel, Ms. Whitnell, is with us somewhere, and rather than me telling it from the position of a commissioner, she might just give you a minute of the process and different ways it can go from the committee to the commission or be sidetracked for a different process. Ms. Whitnell, are you still around, or is Ms. Elliott there to answer? Oh, there's Ms. Whitnell. This is Maeva, and she's at the end of her process of being interviewed, and she has a question about what does the commission do in relationship to the decisions of the committee.
Sure, I'd be happy to respond to that. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, the commission is by statute the supervisor of the committee. And so the commissioners appoint the committee members, and the committee members serve at the pleasure of the commission. And what the commissioners appoint the committee members to do is to have a probable cause hearing on educator misconduct cases. And then the committee has a lot of options. And if you are appointed, you will have training from the legal office on this, but they have various options. They can close a case. They can take any number of types of discipline. And if the committee recommends an adverse action, then that recommendation will go to the commission on a calendar. And then the commissioners will consider the committee's recommendation and determine whether they agree with that recommendation based on the facts in that case. And if the commission disagrees with the committee's recommendation, the commission may remand the matter back to the committee for reconsideration. If the commission agrees with the committee's recommendation, the commission may adopt that recommendation as its own decision. I hope that answers your question in terms of the relationship.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But back to the relationship on a regular basis, the committee is the initial determiner. The commission can't possibly hear all the cases, the committee does. So the commission has as its primary option to adopt the decision that the committee made. They don't hold their own hearing, hear the evidence again, and so forth. That does happen in a different way, though. There are cases where the applicant is facing discipline. They have the option to have a an administrative law judge hear the facts and make a recommendation to the commission. So they don't just have to take the committee's word as final. They have the ability to appeal, in effect, to a state-appointed administrative law judge, and that judge renders a separate opinion. So the process can be long and involve many different levels, but as Ms. Whitnell explained, you'll get a good education from our legal staff as to how to proceed and what you need to know, and then you just have to put in the time and make serious judgments. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
Anything from my fellow ad hoc committee members? Commissioner Cardenas?
I'm just gonna say thank you very much for being here, and these were definitely tough questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons?
We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was nice to meet you, and Mieva, and we will now deliberate about the vacancies we have as public members to the committee, and you'll be notified in writing by the commission staff of our decision.
Okay, great. Thank you kindly.
Thank you for your time.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. We've heard from two applicants for this position, Barry Kaler and Maeva Renaud. And we have two vacancies. We have two candidates. So I think we should have a discussion of each in turn, and then we can move to a motion. So Commissioner Cardenas, let's first consider Mr. Kaler. Comments, questions?
I just think that Mr. Kaler's experience in law enforcement, he really understands certain aspects of the law, and I know Ed Code wouldn't always align, but he would definitely have that background, and him having a background also as a board member in education, he does understand that aspect of education. So I feel like he has a really strong background in understanding and also in due process. So I think that's really positive. And again, he was very thoughtful, I believe, in his answers. I really wanted to know about the facts, wanted to have more information, didn't just jump to conclusions, but just was really thoughtful in the way he responded. And so for me, it brought a lot of awareness as far as being able to remove himself, from the process. And also, like I said, I found that he was very thoughtful in his answers.
Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, when I read the scenarios before the meeting today, I have to say, I thought that I was asking myself the same questions and thinking about how would I answer these. And I think that I liked his processing. And I think that is due to his experience in his various fields. And the fact that even though employee and student discipline that a Board of Education member is involved in is different, I think that those are transferable skills.
Well, I agree with both of you. I think you've hit all the important points. I will confess that with his background, I was concerned that he may have jumped to conclusions at times based on his law enforcement experience, and might be tough, too tough to consider every single case on the same basis. But after listening to his answers and how he would take on difficult questions, even from us, I think he'd be a valuable member of the committee, and we're fortunate to have his application. So we can either take action on Mr. Kaler's interview and application at this time, or we can wait and consider him in the same after we consider our other applicant. Is it either of you have a motion to appoint Mr. Kaler?
I so move.
Great. Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, we're unanimous then. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great.
Excuse me.
That's great.
Hello?
Do we have to do this
Hello?
by roll call?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
We will need to do a roll call.
okay.
Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney,
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Haju, I was saving time, but it took longer. All right, then we have one candidate to discuss. We have one vacancy left. Our choices are to appoint Ms. Renaud as a member of the committee or an alternate to the committee, or neither. Jose? Your comments.
I feel like she had a lot more experience that she could offer. Just when she definitely mentioned that she has a special ed background, a preschool teacher, understands a lot about public policy, how to make changes. Very aware of that. I think one of the things that I was noticing, and maybe you also alluded to, was this would be very new to her. This would be a very new process for her as far as that teacher discipline aspect of it. But I also believe she's coming at it from the right angle of students first, right? So I think she would bring a very great perspective as far as really balancing out for students, and then really understanding the process that teachers must go through in this. So I do feel like she brings a lot to the table. It would be new for her because she does come more from a policy angle.
David?
I think that it was clear that she didn't understand the process, that there's an investigatory piece that goes on before it gets to the Committee of Credentials. And I think if she had known that, her answers might have been different. Two quotes stick out for me. One was regulations trump how I feel. That was in question 8. And she also, in question 9, without hesitation, she said children always come first. So I feel like that she would be, even though she does not currently understand the process, once she knew the process, I feel that she would be amenable to it, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense to me. I had many of the same feelings that the two of you did. My initial feeling was that she was mismatched with the position. Very sensitive, warm person. If she was babysitting me, I think it'd be pretty easy to get away with stuff. But as the interview proceeded, she answered some tough questions with real resolve. And I think it was more a matter of her just not understanding the position very well going in, whereas Mr. Kaler had not only a lot of experience in similar matters, but had a friend tell him exactly what the committee does. And she didn't have that benefit apparently. So given the first any of us sees of the complicated procedure, it was not that far off base. So
And
which of
Commissioner
this-
Cooney, I would agree with you as far as that experience that the previous gentleman had, you know, knowing somebody on the commission, understanding that process, where I think this person could have definitely, with a little bit more prompting, will definitely understand and could be a huge asset.
So you'd be in favor of appointing her to the committee at this time, as opposed to being an alternate?
I think I would see her as someone who, and I just want to get a little more understanding, as an alternate, you're still part of this process, or are you removed from it until somebody is not available?
The latter.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's a tough decision. You know, in other words, we all agree she needs more experience, more information, but from what we could tell, she has the qualities to be a good member of the committee. And the committee has a vacancy now. The other choice would be to go back to the field and try and find other candidates. So we're tempted, I'm tempted to recommend to the commission that we include her as a new public member and be able to assure our fellow commissioners that while with less experience than Mr. Kaler, she has the basic qualities needed for the job.
I would agree.
How about you, David?
I will second that motion.
A motion to appoint?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so we're ready for a roll call.
Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney,
Aye.
David Simmons,
Aye.
motion carries.
Fantastic. Let's see if there's anything else. Looks like not. I really appreciate the two of you spending time like this from your busy schedules. And I think I've done it 2 or 3 other times, and it's always enjoyable to see this part of the commission's duties. So 3 of the 4 male members of the commission got together and did the work.
Appreciate you
anything
leading
else?
this. Thank you.
Oh, I was glad to. Anything else from council or from Rhonda? Not hearing
No, I
you.
think you've covered everything.
Okay, great. Thanks for all your support, everybody. And we'll talk and see you next week.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Okay, meeting adjourned.